Hey, it's Dr. Dwain Woode, and welcome to 100 Days of Consistency, a walking experience. And I am on day number 6, and welcome. I'm glad that you're joining me. We've been having a great time. I've been having a great time as I continue working on consistency, and glad that you are here hanging out with me. And today I want to get into a really important topic that really sets the stage for a lot of what we do in our lives. And it is this concept called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity. And I hope that you are going through the workbook. All right, I'm going to say this again at the end, but make sure that you are not short-circuiting this process, that you are spending the time going through the workbook, and that you are taking time to walk with us, okay? Now, whatever the thing is that you're working on, the metabolism issue, the diabetes, blood sugars, the weight, the mental clarity, being mindful, being emotional intelligence, saving money, whatever it is, the process is the same. Here we're working on being consistent in terms of walking, and we're using walking as that example. But I want to make sure that you are going through the material, because that is so important. So neuroplasticity is what we're going to talk about today. So what is neuroplasticity? Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to learn new skills, to incorporate new experiences, to develop new memories, and to basically incorporate the things that you're experiencing, incorporate the things that are going on into a usable, organized method. All right, so remember, the brain's job is really to take all the things that come at us, which are a lot, right? So every moment they tell me that we get thousands of signals that are coming towards us, coming at us. And our brain basically organizes those signals in a way that makes sense, right? So that's the ultimate job of the brain, is to make sure things make sense. And so it reorganizes, makes connections so that those things, so that we don't go crazy, basically, right? Because can you imagine trying to, each time you have to experience something or make a decision, dealing with all the signals that come from that thing, right? Your brain would not be able to do that. So it develops these patterns of understanding and making sense of the world around us. That's why we recognize familiar things, right? So we recognize faces, we recognize places, we recognize music, we recognize a passage of a text that we've read before, because our brain has created essentially a pattern that goes along with that thing that that we are experiencing. And you'll see here in the morning, I am actually walking around my office. As I mentioned to you before, I am planning to walk every day. I don't have a time, but my consistency says that I'm flexible and that I'm able to do that when needed. And so one of the things that we talk about is flexibility. Okay, so remember that. All right, so neuroplasticity. So the ability to make connections. And I want you to think about neuroplasticity. Here's an example. So there's a connection, kind of like a path in a forest. If you go into the forest, you go into the woods, the first time you go there, there's a lot of bush, there are a lot of trees, the grass is overgrown. But after a while, if people keep walking through that one path, basically what begins to happen is that soon going through that path that's been created is much easier than going anywhere else, right? Because that path has been worn into the woods, worn into the jungle, worn into your lawn, right? You've been places where you see like some business or so forth, and they've got this path that's been worn into their area. And so that basically is neuroplasticity. So neuroplasticity is the process of creating that pathway so that it's much easier to take that pathway than it is to do anything else, okay? So making those connections, making those neurons, connecting between those things that we want. One of the things that we talked about earlier was being able to attach new behaviors to things that you already did so that the habit that you have triggers the new behavior. And that's one of the ideas behind neuroplasticity. That is being able to create a pathway, a neuron between two things. Now, neuroplasticity is great for not just building new behaviors, right? And we'll talk about some of the things that go on there, but it's also good for breaking old behaviors, because going back to that example of being in the woods, and I'm coming up on a road right here. I think I might turn around, get rid of some of this noise, but maybe I'll walk across. But one of the things, so back to the pathway, if we continue to use that one pathway, then that pathway continues to be the best way, the easiest way, the most efficient way to get through the woods. But if all of a sudden we begin going a different way, right? Moving through another pathway, then that pathway now can become the easiest way, and the old one becomes overgrown. So notice what happens. Because we are developing a new path, now we're consistent on that new path, then the old path starts to fade away as the new path gets developed. And the more we do it, the more we go to the new path, the more we go through the process of walking down that path, it becomes easier to do that. And then the old path begins to become the one that's overgrown, and it's no longer the best way to go, okay? So neuroplasticity not only allows us to develop new pathways, not only allows us to develop new ways of doing things, but it also allows us the ability to get rid of some of those old methods, those old habits. And that's the beauty of the process, that it helps us develop new, more vigorous, beneficial habits. And it also allows us to break some of those old habits that we have that may not be the best for us, okay? All right, so let's talk a little bit about the neuroplasticity itself. So when we are talking about neuroplasticity, several things happen. So our brains, our bodies communicate in lots of different ways. Hormones, and you know I'm the hormone guy, all right, the endocrinologist. But it also communicates, it uses vessels to send blood from one place to the other. But it also communicates with nerves, neurons, okay? Synapses. So a signal comes from one part of the body and it's relayed to other parts of the body through nerves, synapses, okay? And when a signal has to go from one place to the other, the speed with which that signal goes dictates how easy it is for that signal to become or be used. And so as we're developing neuroplasticity, what happens is the body builds new neuronal connections from one place to another. So we have a new memory that's going on. We have a new habit that we're forming. So that when you get up in the morning and you walk, for example, every morning that you walk, the body now creates a new signal that says, in the morning we walk. In the morning we walk. That's day 1. In the morning we walk, day 2. In the morning we walk, day 3. In the morning we walk, day 4. In the morning we walk, day 5. In the morning we walk, day 6. In the morning we walk, day 7. Notice what's happening. We are now building, we are creating a signal in the brain, in the body, if you will, that in the morning we walk. And so that path is being worn into the synapse. The body's making those connections. It's sending a signal from one place to the other that says, okay, this is what we do in the morning. And after a while, just someone who's learning a piece of music, if you've ever learned, taken lessons, right? Music lessons. You know that when you first start, it doesn't feel right. It feels awkward, right? For instance, you're playing the piano, the signals or the fingering seems awkward. Like, why would I put my finger there? Why would I stretch my pinky over there? Why would I put these two fingers together? But the more you practice it, after a while, you don't even have to think about it anymore, right? Because the fingers automatically go where they're supposed to go. They go on the right keys. And you have to actually think about how to not let that happen, because you have developed the connection between between the keys and where the fingers go. And that is neuroplasticity. That is doing it so much that now the opposite or something different is now not the default, okay? So we're building those connections. The other thing that happens in neuroplasticity is that after a while, the body now begins, the body now begins causing myelin, and myelin is the protective coat that surrounds nerves. The body begins increasing the amount of myelin that is around the nerve that's connecting this synapse, that's connecting that signal. So not only is it the usual thing to do, but it also becomes now the fastest thing to do, right? So as the myelin builds up around the nerve, then that signal gets faster and faster and faster. And so you've probably heard people talk about muscle memory. And muscle memory simply means that you've done something so often, you've done something so consistently, you've done something for so long, that now that muscle, that memory or the actual muscle itself can't do anything else. It's kind of like that piano player who practices the scales and practices a piece of music and over and over and over, and now the muscles, the fingers, go exactly where they're supposed to go. They almost don't even need to think anymore, okay? So neuroplasticity, developing a path, being consistent, and we'll talk about why consistency does that in a minute, and also the system gets faster, okay? So why is consistency key to neuroplasticity? Consistency is key to neuroplasticity because of the repetition. That's it right there. Because of the repetition. Because of the ability to go through that process over and over and over and over. And each time you do it, each time you repeat it, what you're doing is you're cutting a path into that behavior, okay? I'll go back to music for a minute. I love music. I'm not a great piano player, but I did take music lessons. I should have stuck with it longer. But I remember when I started playing piano, and even now as I try to play the piano and my son is learning, I try to tell him the same thing. What happens for a lot of people is that they're trying to learn a piece of music and they get to a part of the music, so they're playing the beginning, they get to a part of the music that's difficult. And they mess up somewhere in the piece itself. This is in their practice. And what they do is they go back to the beginning. And they play, and they get to the part where, because they think, okay, let me get back to the beginning, and I start over, and I'll get to this part, and I'll kind of work through. And they get to that part again, and they may go a little further, but essentially what happens is it's difficult, and they stop, and they go back to the beginning, right? And they do that over and over and over. Now, eventually, they play the piece through. But one of the things that happened is that they've played the beginning of the music. They've played the beginning of the piece hundreds of times. And they've only played the part that they've had difficulty with maybe 20, 30, 40 times. So which part of the piece of music do you think they would have the best, they'll be able to play the best? It's the part that they've been doing over and over and over and over. And so I tell my son, and I tell people, I understand that you made a mistake right here, but play it through the entire piece. And the next time you come, play from the beginning. And when you get to the hard part, play it through to the end and then start over again. And when you get to the difficult part, play it through to the end. Because now what's happened is you've played the entire piece hundreds of times rather than just having played it just a few times. Okay? And that is neuroplasticity at work. Neuroplasticity says that the more you do it, the more consistent you are, the more you beat a path, now that becomes the norm. That becomes the thing that you do. And so in our quest for health, that's why consistency builds neuroplasticity. That's why consistency allows us to make those changes, because when we do that over and over and over and over again, we're beating that path into the process. We are making that path the default. And after a while, we don't have to think anymore, okay? I give the example of people who are trying to wake up early in the morning. And I'm waiting for this truck to go by. They wake up early in the morning. That's their plan. And they want to set a clock. And they set the alarm. And the first morning is hard. And the next morning is hard. But if they consistently do it, right? Every time they do it, they're putting a piece of support for that neuroplasticity. And so after a while, even before the alarm goes off, they're up. They're like, okay, I'm up 5 minutes before the alarm goes off. Okay, right? What's happened is that their body has made a connection. It's the neuroplasticity of that action has been created. And there's now a neuronal connection that says, hey, I get up at whatever time it is. Okay, I want you to try that. All right, and the more you do it, the easier that becomes. Now, why is that? Why is neuroplasticity important for what we want to do? Neuroplasticity is important because as we set ourselves up for success, I'm gonna let this truck go by. All right, so neuroplasticity is important because as we are trying to develop new habits, as we are trying to set ourselves up for success in terms of our health, the easier we make things, the more likely we are to be successful. I'm at a crosswalk right here. But I want you to listen to what I said. As we are setting ourselves up for metabolic health, as we're setting ourselves up to be to reverse our diabetes, to improve our weight, right? Whatever the goal is that we're working on, to save money, to improve our relationships, to become less anxious, and you can plug in whatever it is that you're working on. The easier it is for that thing to happen, the more likely we are to be successful. And so neuroplasticity is a way to automate our success. It's a way to automate our success. If you have a business or you've ever tried to do something where it is a repetitious thing, the more often you're able to automate the process, the more often you're able to make it automatic, the easier it is to get that thing done. And the more consistent you are, the better the quality is of the thing that you're doing. But if each time you have to do it, you've got to think about it. If each time you have to create the process again, then the likelihood of you doing it first or being successful at it goes down. It's kind of like when I first started doing shows on my YouTube channel. I didn't have my studio set up. And I'm gonna step away from the side here for a minute. I didn't have my studio set up. And so each time I needed to do a video, I had to walk into the studio. I had to get the lights set up. I had to put the mics in place. I've got to get the cameras going. And so the thought of going to create a video each time was a chore, because each time I had to do something, I had to go through the process of getting things going. So what I finally did, following the advice of a good friend of mine, was I got the studio set up the way I wanted. So now when I'm ready to make a video, you know what I do? I walk into the studio and I turn on the lights, or hit a switch actually. And everything is already in place for me to do what I need to do. And so the process of creating videos, the process of just having an idea, getting up and running into the studio and say, hey, I'm gonna record this real quick, is easier. So now my creation process is much, much simpler. This morning, I got everything ready and I decided that I was going to walk at lunchtime. I decided I was gonna walk at lunchtime. And so I came out and I had everything in my car, and I got here this morning and I said, wait a minute, I have time right now. Let me just go ahead and do the video and I can walk around. Well, let me try to get across this road. Gotta get back to the office. I can go ahead, I could do that video this morning. But that's possible, that became possible because I had everything already in place. If I did not have everything in place, and I'm rushing to get across here, if I did not have everything in place, then I could not have done that. And so what we want to do is we want to automate the process. We want to make our successful behaviors as easy as possible to be done, so that we don't have to recreate or rebuild each time. And that makes it much, much simpler for us to do. That's why it's important to develop neuroplasticity. It is important to harness neuroplasticity. I should say develop it, to harness it. So figure out what are those keystone, coming back to that thought, what are those keystone behaviors that we want to use? What are those keystone habits that we're using? And then go ahead and build those into our process and develop some neuroplasticity, develop some habits, develop some behaviors around that. Okay, so that is the creation of those habits, right? There's also the breaking of habits. And so one of the benefits of neuroplasticity is that not only does it allow us to create those beneficial habits, But there are some habits that we have done, that we've developed, that don't serve us anymore. Oh yeah, you know some of the ones. And the question I get asked a lot is, as I'm developing new habits, I still struggle with this other thing. And the beauty of neuroplasticity is that neuroplasticity allows us to overwrite, if you will, circumvent in some cases, and develop a new path. It's kind of like, have you ever been to the beach? And we just came back from the beach a little while ago. Been to the beach, and in the sand, you create a little canal. I mean, when I was a kid, and my son, when he was a young kid, we did this. And so basically what you do is you create a canal, right? So you dig a trench basically in the sand, and you dig a second trench. And one of the things that sometimes will happen is that one trench will be much deeper than the other. And so what happens is the water will come and it'll go through into the trench that's the easiest to get into, right? And that is what's going on when we're talking about developing new habits and breaking old habits. So your body, your brain, your mind will take you down the trench, the habit that's easiest to do. And so as you're developing new habits, as you are solidifying the neuroplasticity in one area, it makes the brain say, hey, it's much easier. And I'm trying to figure out let me go this, we're gonna go this way. The brain says, okay, which one of these is the easiest for me to do? And that's the one that it will go down. And that is how we overcome some of those habits that seem as though they're insurmountable. Because neuroplasticity allows us to develop new habits because we're now making new connections. The muscle memory is there. The myelin sheets.
Time 27 minutes 56 seconds. Total distance 1.0 miles. Average pace 27 minutes 56 seconds per mile. Split pace 27 minutes 56 seconds per mile.
That was just my app telling me, reading some of the statistics for my walk. Okay, but I was going through neuroplasticity. Right. So we've made the connection. We're consistently doing it. So we're building that path. We're cutting that path. Now it becomes automatic because muscle memory has kicked in. Now the myelin sheets have built up around that connection. And so it's faster. And now the process of doing whatever that thing is automated. Did you follow that? We've just automated the ability to be successful. So one of the things that this is a show that we've got to do. I've got to talk about this. But one of the things that I've learned is that people who are successful, they're not smarter, they're not faster, they're not more intelligent. You know what they are? They're more consistent. Oh yeah. So you find anybody who's successful, and I mean, there are people who've been given, money as kids, and they inherited and so forth. But a lot of other people who didn't grow up in that frame. It's not that they're smarter. It's just that they have more consistency. They have resilience. They have flexibility. And so when we're talking about neuroplasticity is a way of automating success. It's a way of automating the ability to move in the direction that we want to go. It's a way of automating what we do so that we set ourselves up for ultimate success. And if we can do that, if we're able to harness that, why not do it? Right? Why not do it? Because it is so important, y'all, that we move in the direction to be healthy. The two most valuable things that we own, the two most valuable things that we have, are our time and our health. And if we don't have either of those, then it sets us up for lots of failure, and it sets us up to not be in the space that we want to be, right? What do we do? How do we use the things that we've talked about? Education, empowerment, encouragement. How can we be successful in doing that? And a huge part of it has to do with our ability to be successful, set ourselves up in a place, right? Those behaviors, those mechanisms, right? Those systems, right? So you show me somebody who is successful, and I'll show you their systems. You show me somebody who's not successful, and the likelihood is that they don't have good systems. And so in our quest to be successful, it is the system that we put in place that gives us the best opportunity for being successful. So hey, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. I'm so glad that you were able to join me here on day number 6. Make sure you join me for day number 7 as we continue our 100 days of consistency, a walking journey. Be successful. We educate, we empower, and we encourage. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.